Hello, everyone, and welcome to A Seat at the Table. This is our May edition. I had to stop and ask myself what month it was because that's where we are now in 2021, right? But thank you for joining us. This is our monthly chat show where we bring in a panel and we talk about some issues that are affecting the LGBTQIA+ community. My name is Rob Ward. I am the entertainment director for Come Out with Pride. So excited to welcome you guys to our table. Please feel free to join this chat as we go forward, because we'd love to hear what you have to say. If you have opinions, if you have questions, please send them into the comments. We would love to see them, and we'd love to have you as part of the conversation. I'm excited to bring up this panel of guests. I'm going to bring them in one by one, let them introduce themselves to you. So first of all, I want to bring in the wonderful Mr. Danny Garcia is here with us. Danny, hey, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from,
Sure.
what you're doing.
Of course, yeah. I'm originally from Miami, but I've lived in Orlando for quite some time. I work for Watermark. I'm the sales director at Watermark, which is the local LGBTQ publication for Central Florida and Tampa Bay. I'm also the vice president of the centers, the LGBT centers board. So I'm quite involved in the community.
Awesome. And you are a single man, correct?
Well, as of recently, yes.
I was like, well, that got complicated.
Isn't it always, though?
and how do you identify? Just curious. In the spectrum.
Flaming homosexual.
Flaming homosexual. Great. Yes. That's wonderful. I want to bring in some more friends with us. Coming up next, we've got Jason Lee coming in to join us. Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Excellent. Now, I don't really know you in the real world, so tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am the owner and operator of Idratherbenaked clothing. It was a brand I started in Orlando. I actually don't live in Orlando. I live in Sarasota, but I frequent Orlando quite a bit, doing a lot of community work and a lot of stuff with my clothing brand.
Awesome. And tell me a little bit about that clothing brand, because I love the name of it.
So the clothing brand, it started on accident. It started with a hashtag, I'd rather be naked. And I just made a bunch of shirts that said that, and I just kind of ran with it. And then I saw a need within our community, and it was to discuss mental health. So nudity is actually to be naked, be without clothes, and naked is to be open and vulnerable. So the mantra, I'd rather be naked, is actually something you can use to get through hard times in life. Because in psychology practices, they say to get through hard times is to be open and vulnerable with yourself and the people around you, and you'll heal from things. So it's an entirely positive mental health brand with a play on words to kind of get you interested at first.
Awesome. I love that. So exciting. And how do you identify in this spectrum that we are all on?
I'm a straight trans man, and that's
Awesome.
simple as that.
Wow, that's great. Awesome. Well, we're so glad you're here with us. Looking forward to a great conversation with you. I want to bring in some more friends, though. This is a professional dancer who I've had the honor of working with a few times. I want to bring her on here. This is Bianca Heard.
Hi, Rob.
Hey, Bianca, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm excited to have you in this conversation. You and I used to work together at a happy place nearby that we shall not name. It's exciting to see you here. Tell us a little bit about you.
I was born and raised here in Orlando, Florida. I'm also a dancer for Les Vixens Burlesque. We're residents at Southern Nights. And I also go dance stand in Tampa for Tigress Entertainment. So that's kind of taken over my life lately.
Awesome. So you're doing that currently, yeah?
Yes.
Excellent. And you, if you don't mind my saying, you identify as a pansexual. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait for us to get into some conversation about that.
I'm
We've got a lot of fun stuff ahead. I want to bring in now, though, Vicky Restrepo, who's joining us. Hi, Vicky. How are you?
Hi. Good evening, everyone. My name is Vicky Restrepo. I am original from Colombia, South America. I lived in Boston, Miami, and now I'm in Orlando, and I've been here for 2 years already. I work for Bliss Health. I'm a licensed mental health counselor. So what we do in Bliss Health is our goal is to provide comprehensive medical care to patients living with or at risk of HIV, STDs, and hepatitis. We integrated the mental health department, which I think it's awesome. I mean, we all have the stigma that mental health is only for crazy people that are not, well. And in reality, I think we all need that mental health. We all need to go to a therapist just to talk.
Probably not.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I'm sure you've got some great insight to add into these conversations. So I can't wait. Can I ask you how you personally identify in
Cis women?
Awesome. Well, I look forward to having a conversation with you.
Me too. I'm very excited about it.
It should be a great time. And I'm so excited to bring in our next guest because he is an activist, a comedian, also my former roommate. So someone I clearly enjoy in the world, and I'm very happy to have him here with us. This is Mr. Logan Donahue.
Hello.
Hello. How are you?
Doing very well. How are you?
Excellent. It's good to see you, my friend. I know we've been seeing a lot of each other at Fringe, too.
Yes.
So it's good to see you on the screens. For those of you who don't know, that's the Orlando International Fringe Theater Festival, which is going on right now. And Logan, you have a show there called Slut Like Me.
I do.
That we're going to get into a little bit, because I think some of the reason I wanted to have you here is a lot of the topics you address in that show correlate well with what we're doing.
Things Venn diagram together.
All the time, and I love that. But just in case other people don't know you, tell us a little bit about you.
I am a mostly solo performer. A lot of people know me here from the Orlando International Fringe Theater Festival. I've been doing independent theater for over half my life, mostly comedy. Mostly lately, stand-up with slides is kind of my format, almost like a informative yet slightly dirty TED Talk. I had a large part of my life being an activist, working for several different organizations from Hope and Help Center to the LGBT Community Center, and I like letting people laugh and hopefully change the world through that laughter.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to actually keep you on screen because we're going to bring everybody in because we're going to dive right into our conversation. So good to have you all here. What a great panel we have. I think we're in for some great chats today. I wanted to just start off, though, by asking you guys, what is your thoughts about what the world is like dating right now in I wouldn't say post-COVID, but in the world of like the tail end of COVID? How has that been like for you guys dating within this past year? Let's start with Logan.
Arduous is a word for it. No. In a weird way, it forced me to hone back things in. I am very sex positive personally, so I used to pride myself on having many a conquest and many a diversion. However, over the last year, I just kind of honed things in and went on maybe a handful of dates, and even then it was very like, Hey, do you want to go to the drive-in? Sit 6 feet away. Ha ha ha. Like, kind of testing the waters with very select people. It also, I stopped touching dating apps personally for like 9 months, 10 months. I was like, no, I'm good, and just kind of stepped away for most of it. So personally, that's how I've been doing it, and nourishing those handful of quality situations that I really wanted to.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I will say too, as someone who I'll admit that I am on the dating apps, and I was amazed when COVID was first really showing its head, and we were really in the main period of the lockdown. I would occasionally go on the app just to like chat and meet people, but I was amazed at how many people were trying to encourage meetups. That I was like, really? We're hiding in our homes. I'm not going to go to
Not right now.
and meet up with you. What do you think is going on? So,
Pandemic be damned. I'm going to get laid.
right. I get everybody's got needs, but come on, yo.
No, my situation was a little weird because I actually went on my first date with somebody literally 2 weeks right before the lockdown. I was on a Sunday. That Monday, I woke up sick, scary enough, and I had the flu, but it turned out to only be the flu, thankfully. The following week was right when everything was about to go into lockdown, and my conversation with him was like, oh, I'm freaking out because there's no toilet paper. And we met up, or what I jokingly call our second date was at the Wawa parking lot, 6 feet apart, where he tossed the 24-pack of toilet paper to me. I know, love, right?
No more.
That's
And then for the
They say romance is dead.
right. No, and then for the months that followed, it was a lot of conversation, conversation, FaceTiming, which I think really helped in the situation because we didn't jump into anything face to face. We actually got to know each other a little bit better. And there were times where he would be like, you need to come over. And I'm like, I really can't at the moment. My mom's over 60. I'm the one that's doing all the shopping. I don't want to get her in a situation where she may be exposed. So, respect that. And he did, thankfully, So that was my situation with the pandemic, at least in the beginning.
Yeah, awesome. Jason, how about you?
Well, I was in a relationship before the pandemic started, and I kind of maintained that relationship throughout the pandemic. And the biggest thing for me and for us was we had to be creative with dates and things to do. So we couldn't go to restaurants, we couldn't go to movies, we couldn't do things like that. So we had to find new things. So we got kayaks and we went kayaking. We spent a lot of time outside. We split a PS4 and played a ton of video games. So it was just a ton of, we still want to hang out as much as we were before because we were in one little circle, so we were safe. And we basically lived with each other at that time. So we just had to be creative. And honestly, I like dating during COVID more than I like regular dating because I got to do more fun things instead of just the normal go to dinner, do all that. It was an adventure, to be honest with you. And
what a fun discovery.
Yeah, so it was okay. I honestly, besides the part of we couldn't go out as much, I didn't really struggle as much through that when it came to dating.
Yeah, that's great. How about you, Bianca? What was your experience like?
Prior to COVID, I wasn't much of an active dater, if you will. I was very, very busy, and it's hard to find people who can keep up sometimes. So COVID actually gave me a chance to slow down and get to know different people from a distance, which is better for me. I like to get to know people. I take my time in getting to know people. I did have a situation kind of like Danny's where I guess towards the tail end of when things were kind of opening up, I did a Taco Bell parking lot breakfast date with this girl. And I was like, Taco Bell breakfast is going to change your life. And we parked our cars 6 feet away and we had our breakfast. It was
we know how to date in Orlando. Wawa, Taco Bell.
I'm saying.
We
Get that breakfast taco.
It's the breakfast crunch wrap. It's so good. But so I've gotten a chance actually to kind of explore, I guess, what I like in dating a little bit more over COVID because I've had a chance to slow down and actually get to know people. So, yeah.
Awesome. And what about you, Vicky? In your role, with Bliss, what are you finding from you personally and also in your role as being a mental health counselor?
Well, personally, like Jason was saying, I'm with Jason, I've been in a relationship, so for me it wasn't hard. From working at Bliss with all my patients, it was a struggle. There was a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of depression. Some of my patients, the more introvert, they got used to the dating, the websites. Some of them they didn't do it. So the ones that didn't do it, they were like in very lonely, very lonely. And dating sites are not for everyone. So some of the people that are more introvert, they're not into websites or dating sites or anything like that. So it was difficult. I think it was very rough for some people. And at the end of the day, you have to be very creative. So for the people that were not creative, they were just stuck at home, like not doing anything. So I think it was like a balance. Some people did well, some people didn't do too well.
Yeah, for sure. I know personally, I was in a relationship that ended a couple months before COVID began, but I was living with my ex. And when I saw the lockdown coming, we had a conversation of like, you got to get out before we get along. We're fine.
Run.
I don't want to be stuck inside.
Get out.
Just the two of us. We've already made that choice. That's not where our future is. So yeah,
I can imagine that's tough though, being like forced back into a relationship with somebody.
It is. Yep.
Yeah, and I'm sure that happened to a lot of people out there. If you think about it.
Yep.
Especially when you don't have the option of meeting too many new people. So
right.
Interesting times. I do want to ask a question though, going beyond COVID. This one specifically for Bianca. As someone who identifies as pansexual, and also yesterday was Pansexual Awareness. Was that yesterday?
I think it was 2 days ago, maybe.
2 days ago. It's all blending together. But yes, Pansexual Awareness Day just passed. And as the person on this panel who identifies as a pansexual, I wanted to ask you what challenges you feel like appear in the world of dating as a pansexual.
Definitely in trying to date girls, I kind of, because I present more femme, I have to kind of overdo it to kind of get people to notice that I also like girls. But there's also kind of this fear that runs kind of in the community that girls like me who will date all genders, there's this fear that we will leave our partner for someone of the opposite gender, which is not true. I'm sure there are some bad eggs here and there, but it's definitely a stigma that runs and something that we definitely have to squash.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Do you ever get people too who kind of dismiss pansexuality? I hear that a lot from pansexuality and bisexuality. There's people say, "Oh, you just,
Some people are like, "Oh, it's just like a gateway to being gay," or "Oh, you're just gonna flip flop or switch." And I am someone who's very confident in my sexuality, and I've, had a pretty easy time figuring it out. And my parents have been supportive. They've come around over the years. But there are definitely people who I guess have some like internalized things that they project. And I have been very fortunate that I myself, no one's told me to my face that they think that that's going to be an issue, that I'm going to leave them for somebody else. But I have a lot of friends who have definitely run into that issue, and I've overheard it a lot in the community for sure.
Yeah. So there's more work we can do as a community to erase that.
Definitely.
Yeah. And I want to address, thank you for that. I want to address a question to Jason, which is, as a trans man, how do you feel like that has affected your dating life?
There's a lot more questions I have to ask the person instead of just like before I transitioned, I thought, because I identified as lesbian before I transitioned, and I thought that was way easier. I was more basically had short hair, looked more like a butchier lesbian. So that was an easy experience. Transitioning was way different because I pass. That's not the issue. It's the conversation after that that's always been a little more challenging. Because obviously I've got different hardware than what maybe a straight person, a straight female is used to. So in my last relationship, that was just a conversation that you have to have at the beginning. So that's just a little bit of a challenge. But when it comes to dating in general, I think that's just a challenge as it is. So I just try to remind myself that as a trans person, yes, the conversation is different, but I'm not the only person who's struggling with something when it comes to finding a partner.
Yeah, that makes total sense. We all have our different struggles. But yeah, I could see that definitely being a conversation that you have to have.
Exactly. It's just a conversation, and if it doesn't go well, it doesn't go well, and we just got to move on from that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Absolutely.
Logan, I have a question for you. Your show that you have at the Fringe Festival right now is called Slut Like Me.
Yes.
And it's about your, it's tips and funny quips about the world of being sex positive and how to be a sex positive person.
Yes.
Do you find, though, that there, as a person who is sex positive and isn't shy about that, do you find that there's stigma attached to that?
Yeah, there's there's always a degree of slut shaming out there, as it were, when people hear about either your sexual history or proclivities, and some of it's either a bridge too far, or they're afraid of, afraid of almost this like boogeyman specter in their head. Like, okay, you're into these things, and that's what this means. And, you almost have to rewind it back for them. It opens up an opportunity for more communication. It can be an opportunity, but also it feels like, to an extent, where you're just demystifying things for people. Like, no, just cause I've done XYZ doesn't mean you and I need to do XYZ together. And just like being someone that's open and honest about your sexuality, and sexual history, sometimes is like shocking to people. So I have encountered a handful of that. Luckily, it's not too much. I have once, I was prescribed PrEP for HIV prevention. For those unfamiliar, they found out that there's a medication that you can take daily with doctor prescription and monitoring, and it prevents you getting HIV in the first place, much like a birth control pill, for example. And I was briefly once called a, quote, Truvada whore about that, and they just were like convinced that this means I'm doing all these things and all these people, and oh my god, it was just the bridge too far to them. Luckily, that's few and far between. Luckily. But every once in a while when it happens, you're just like, I want to hopefully demystify some of this for you and change your mind maybe a little, so the next person down the line isn't bearing the brunt of their misperceptions about what that means.
Absolutely. It's funny. You actually were the first person to really introduce me to the world of PrEP when we were roommates. You had told me about it, and I was like, "Yeah, okay, I got to make that happen. I
converted you.
You did, but I remember because this was like early in the world of PrEP too. Now it's fairly common, but
Yeah.
I do remember when I first got a prescription for it. I mentioned it to someone just like casually, where I was like, "Oh yeah, I got to go to the pharmacy and get some PrEP because I'm out." You know what I mean? And they were like, "Oh, you take that?" And
Yeah.
I was kind of shocked by that reaction, where I was like, "What? Why wouldn't I? If it can prevent?"
Yeah. Meanwhile, the most open-minded reactions to it that I've gotten have been from heterosexual people that are going in knowing nothing about it. Because when you explain it, even briefly, like I just did, they're like, "Oh, that exists? Why don't more people know about it? Oh, that's awesome. How do I tell my friends about?" Like, they turn into these like instant advocates because they already have birth control in, for a lot of cisgender heterosexual people. They have birth control in their sphere of knowledge, and then when you introduce that, they're like, "Oh, I get it. Apples, oranges, they're still produce. We get this," and they understand and accept it more. But I think we've grown with generations of people where sex equals fear, and sex without necessarily a condom, or sex maybe every once in a while this way or that way, equals this like death sentence. And people wrapping their mind around it has been this like challenge. And it means all these things in their head that it doesn't necessarily need to mean, but it does.
Yeah. I'll say growing up in like the mostly 90s. And, that's what we were told growing up. If you're a gay man and you have sex, you are going to, you're putting yourself at risk of death.
Yeah. It's like a matter of time is almost the vibe that they kept giving you. Like, ugh.
So it's great to see things like PrEP becoming more universally accepted and gaining traction. I think it's people like you and also like Danny and the team over at the Watermark who are, reporting on these things and putting this news out there. It feels like that's so important to continue doing that, so that the conversation is open and honest about it too, so people don't get weirded out by it. I do want to ask a question of Danny as well. So Danny Garcia from the Watermark, in your world of being a, as you said, flaming homosexual, I believe was your status.
Yes.
So do you find that dating in the gay world, do you find it extra tricky? Do you think it's a hard thing to do?
I'll tell you this. I feel like now that I'm over 40, I'm going to be 42 in a few weeks. It's different. Not that I like to compare my life to others, because that's not a way to live your life. But I kind of, look around and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm one of the few single friends, and if I'm not one of the few single ones, I'm also one of the few that's monogamous, really, minded. I jokingly say that my kink is monogamy. And I get approached by people who tend to be very open and poly, and I respect that. I applaud that. It's just not for me. And I jokingly say back, let me master monogamy first, and then we can talk about groups and threesomes and moresomes. But dating as a monogamous person is very difficult because I tend to be a little bit old school about it. I'm not one to date more than one person. I'm also not one to, jump right into bed with somebody just because, again, that's comes from the stigma of growing up in the 90s. I welcome sexuality. I think it's fantastic, but I just, being more vanilla than others, I think, especially at my age, tends to be a turn off to some people. So I find it a little difficult sometimes meeting people.
Yeah, for sure. And that brings to a question that I think all of us can probably address. Logan talked about being sex positive and how people assume that means you're going to be into, if you've explored a particular kink with one person that you won't with another. But I think there's just as much stigma in the community about being someone who maybe isn't into those things, right? Who identifies as vanilla. That's definitely a stigma within our community as well, because sometimes you're like, okay, there's a lot up front that you're asking for that I don't know that I'm in for.
Well, going back to that prep conversation, Watermark was reporting on it, and I decided as like a personal experiment, let me see about getting on it. At the time, I had an openly gay doctor, and I mentioned it to him, and he said, well, with your sexual history, which was next to none, he goes, I don't recommend it. And I said, well, I see it as a safety net. I want to go ahead and go on it. And he said, I personally don't think you should. And his exact words were basically shaming those who were on it. So I said, thank you for your time. I went in and, looked through Watermark and found another doctor. And that doctor said, yes, even if you're not sexually active, you just never know. We'll be more than happy to get you on it. So, and it's amazing. That was all within the same community.
Yeah.
to have that kind of reaction. So
yeah, that's crazy. Especially in that. And also Christopher Pineda, who's in the group, just wants you to know monogamy is his way. So there you go. Awesome. So I'd love to bring everybody in to ask another question. We talked about PrEP, and so a question that's come up is, how do we reach more communities who may not have easy access to PrEP? What do you guys think? What are our ways to make that available or crush some of the stigma that might be attached to it? I want to go to Vicky, since she has the experience with Bliss first.
We at Bliss, we're doing a lot about that. We are going to colleges. Our care managers are going to a lot of places. We at Bliss, we also have uninsured people can go, and they'll get what is called a Bliss Care, which the PrEP will be covered, or the medication for HIV as well. So a lot of people don't know that because they think that PrEP is very expensive, they can't get it, or anything like that. And but at least we do give it. If you're if you're uninsured, they can talk to one of our care managers and do the application and get it free. So I think it's very important. Like you guys talked about, a lot of people have the stigma. Oh my God, you're taking PrEP. Oh my God, you have HIV, or did you whatever, or sleeping around with a lot of people. And it's not about that. I think it's safe. And like you guys said, it's like a birth control pill. That's all it is. That's all it is. And you never know. I mean, the most vulnerable people, have contracted HIV, and they will never thought, that they will contract HIV. So
it only takes one time. So
exactly. And it could be your partner, it could be anyone. So I think PrEP is amazing. So that's what we're doing right now. I mean, right now we are doing a campaign, and I think a lot of the care managers are going out with pamphlets and things like that to promote PrEP and so people will know more about it. I think it's more about getting educated about it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, what you're saying is exactly true, because I experienced that myself personally when I was interested in getting on PrEP for myself. I remember I was working as a freelance, I've been an actor and a director for many years, and I was a freelance artist. So I personally did not have insurance. So I personally thought that I couldn't get it. So I was like, there's no way I'll be able to afford that out of pocket. And it wasn't until learning about programs like that's actually how I was able to get started. It was all paid for me. I think I paid like $40 out of pocket for
exactly.
And a question did just come up from the audience, which is, how long has PrEP been available? I don't know that answer. I don't know if any of you.
I do.
No.
It actually got approved by the FDA almost 10 years ago, back in 2012. It predates that as a treatment medication. Back when I was with the Hope and Help Center, it was one of the things that our client managers would talk to people that are positive, saying like, hey, here's these, at the time it was like starting to par down to like 1 or 2 pills a day, and Truvada was one of them at the time. And then they figured out, they did a bunch of tests with the FDA, and finally in 2012 they approved it for HIV negative people to use it as a prevention medicine. So it's been around for quite some time, and no one's grown a tail yet, so
there was a recent
course a little bit. Who's? Sorry, I didn't see who's just.
Sorry. I was going to say there was a recent interview I did with one of the local news stations here regarding the advanced study that they're doing over at the LGBT Center for One Blood to change the regulations from the FDA. And during the interview, I happened to mention PrEP, and the interviewer was so fascinated by it. And she said, it's funny you mentioned that. Doing my research about this, I just learned about it. And she's like, she's a cisgender heterosexual woman. She's like, I wasn't aware this existed. And I said, well, within the LGBTQ community, it's very well known, but it's getting the word out there. And I think, especially for those of us who are on it, it's definitely worth spreading the word and putting it out there. I mean, I talk very openly about it. I'm sure just as Logan does.
Yeah, and I think the more we talk about it, the more it becomes better known to the world. So we should keep that going. I want to change gears a little bit to ask. Oh wait, actually, there's one more question from the audience about PrEP, so I just want to address that really quick. Is for those of us who are using it or are knowledgeable about it, what are some side effects for the people who are worried about it? I know I will say the honest truth. When I first heard about it, I was scared of the side effects personally, and then I got on it and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But you guys, what do you think are the side effects of it?
I don't want to monopolize the conversation, but one of the big ones, there was all these rumors about liver damage or bone density loss, and what it is a lot of those studies were done in people already living with HIV, and they, of course, marked those down as like, well, this might be a possibility for others taking it, and they found that only happens in maybe 1 out of 2,000 people, where it's like, hey, your liver's kind of struggling. And by struggling, they're like, hey, are you on any like supplements right now? Are you working out a lot? Are you bodybuilding? And cause they monitor your blood levels and all this other stuff. And if need be, they switch you over to a less intense version like Descovy, or now they even have a generic one on the market. So the side effects are both super, super rare and completely reversible that they found. So it's much like rumors about like the vaccine for COVID, a lot of rumors are keeping people from proper treatment, unfortunately.
And on the other hand, every medication that you take has some side effects. I mean, if you look at it, birth control, depression medication, I mean, everything has side effects. So
Yeah, nothing's
Aspirin.
a miracle drug.
exactly.
Cool. I want to ask a question, though, for those of you on the panel who identify as persons of color in the current world. What do you think are some challenges right now about dating as a person of color? Do you think there are challenges that you're facing in that way? Let's start with Bianca.
I have been very fortunate that I haven't had any like major challenges, but there's always that worry. My ex-girlfriend is a white woman. The first time I was going to go meet her parents, they were from California, and I really didn't have very much reason to doubt what kind of people they were, but I was still very, very nervous going into it. And I remember it was quite the conversation that we had, and she didn't quite understand why I was so nervous. And I was like, not only are you dating a woman, your parents thought you were straight up until a few months ago, now you're dating a woman who's Black and Puerto Rican. So I was like, that sometimes is a lot to digest for some people. And I get nervous and I get worried about that. And that's something that happens across the board if I'm dating someone who's not also a person of color. And then there's also the conversation I've had to have with partners who, which hasn't happened recently, but in prior years, prior to like the whole BLM movement really taking force last year, is kind of just addressing things that I have to think about all the time that people who are not Black wouldn't necessarily have to think about when they walk into a room or when they go somewhere. So that's always kind of a tough one to have with my partners because they get a little uncomfortable, but I think it's a very important conversation that needs to be had, especially when you're kind of in a multiracial relationship like that.
Yeah, great answer. Logan, how about you? Have you experienced any challenges being a person who identifies as a person of color in the dating world?
Not. I don't know. I try to rack things up to like, oh well, you know, people don't necessarily. I don't know, people have their quote unquote preferences, but honestly, over the last year, that's been one of the last frontiers for me is looking at. And this sounds way heavier than it is, but looking at the concept of white supremacy in our culture in the biggest sense possible, and how a lot of us, myself included, have grown up hearing messages about how one race is maybe more sexually attractive or viable than the others. And I really had to do a lot of unpacking about those messages myself. And I see others on those journeys. Some are blatant and mean-spirited. I've personally seen profiles where they say, quote, no spice, no rice, meaning and implying that they don't want to ever date a Latino or Latinx or Asian person in their profiles. And I try to just rack it up to, all right, they're uneducated. The ones that make me mad, and I try to have a moment of grace, but don't always, is when they message in saying, you know, like, oh, hey, want to meet up? And then I go read their profile and they have something just blatantly racist in there that they see as, quote, just a preference. And I'm like, oh, I'm not your type, though. Thank you, though. I'm flattered, but I'm not your type. And they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, your profile says this. Oh, I'm like, no, you should change your profile if you're going to message someone like me. And I just like, boop. Cut them off as like, no, I'm saying no for you. I don't want to deal. I don't want to be your conquest. I don't want to be your experimentation. I don't want to be your charity work. I'm good. I want to enjoy this and know I'm not going to wake up the next morning with a burning cross on my lawn or someone with conflicted feelings. Both are horrible and I don't want to deal with them.
Yeah.
So.
I will say too, it's, you know, again, as being someone who's on the apps, it's always so off-putting to me to see that on someone's profile too, like a list of who should not ever contact them.
For real.
I'm like, wow, that takes some.
And I get it, like,
yeah,
like sometimes those comments on those profiles, it turns into almost like, you know, a venting session. You know, they're just wanting to be heard, and they talk about, I don't want cheaters, I don't want this, I don't want that. Like, okay, I see. Someone hurt you, and now you're going out there swinging. But
Who
like,
hurt you?
yeah, who hurt? Well, I know exactly who hurt you now. Okay. But like, they're choosing to lead with that, and then it usually commingles with ruling out entire races. I'm like, okay, you need some soul searching, and I'm not going to be the person to convince you of that. Not here, not now. I'm good. So, ugh.
Makes total sense. How about you, Danny? Have you experienced any challenges being a person of Latino descent, a person of color within our gay community, dating in that world?
The gentleman that I've been dating for the last year, he's actually Black, and that was one of our common grounds, which I actually appreciated. Is, you know, we both sat there, you know, and just complained about the fetishizing of our color. You know, there have been times where I've met people in person after chatting with them online, and they're like, "Oh, you're not as Latino as I expected you to be." I was like, well, just because I don't have an accent, dress a certain way, or listen to a certain kind of music, that does not negate the fact that I am Latino. Trust me, you know, I'm fluent in Spanish and my blood is very fiery. So, but the going back to the fetishizing part of it, though, it's difficult because you want people to like you for you, not necessarily for an idea of what they expect you to be. So that's the hard part. And at the same time, I've been denied many times, you know, for being Latino, or gotten, typically I don't date your kind of people, but you're different, you know, and it's like, no, I don't appreciate that either. Is that supposed to be a compliment?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's a rough one for sure.
mm-hmm.
I want to ask a question to the community, to all of you, but also those of you who are following along too. We're hitting our tail end of this. So if you have questions for our panel, please feel free to ask them. And I just realized I didn't get to address Vicky, though, from that last question, especially with your position being at Bliss. Are you seeing more challenges from people who are persons of color in the dating community?
Not really. Not from the pages that I've seen. No. I haven't seen any challenges at all. Not from the ones that I've seen. Nobody has complained or said anything.
Oh, well, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to make sure we had an opportunity to address that. Also, for you guys, what do you think? What do you think is going to be a challenge in the world of dating post-COVID right now, or a success in the world of dating post-COVID? How do you think COVID is going to change the world of dating and sex, really, within the LGBTQIA community? Anyone have thoughts on there that wants to dive in on that one?
I think there are going to be a lot more different types of dates. I think people are going to be more open to communication. I think that's going to be a big thing moving forward. People are really understanding how important communication is because they were forced to communicate first, get to know the person, and then move on through that. I think honestly, there's a lot of positives that kind of happen by having to change the way you date and kind of step out of your comfort zone and get creative.
For sure. Anybody else have thoughts about how it might change, Danny?
Oh, I have a feeling that it also kind of helped a lot of individuals kind of rediscover themselves. You know, there was a book I read about dating a long time ago that was called If the Buddha Had Dated. And one of the, premises basically was, how can you love yourself, or how can you love somebody else if you don't love yourself? And it was about self-discovery and learning to appreciate what others may see in you. And, having a lot of time by myself, allowed me to reflect and let me know what my goals were, like it kind of reset things. And, I understand it was really difficult for a lot of people, this pandemic, both financially, emotionally, and mentally. But I guess I can say I'm one of the lucky few that on the mental side of things, it kind of helped me just kind of navigate into a better perspective of what I want my life to be. And definitely those dating apps are not it. Not saying that the future may not hold for that, but I decided those were toxic and go elsewhere.
Any thoughts, Logan?
I fired back up the dating apps the other day just to put a feeler out there. But I think the one going forward, two thoughts. One, yeah, like you were saying, Danny, for me, the handful of dates that I went on, it let me nourish the talks with the people that I was. Like, I had the most lovely date one time watching the WandaVision finale at this one person's house, and we made breakfast for dinner and watched it together, and it was just, my heart soared. And then, you know, I went on another date with this other person, and we realized, like, after date 5 or whatnot, we both still hadn't kissed yet, and that was okay because we wanted to be safe, and the vaccine hadn't happened yet. And we both, like, you know, had messaged each other afterwards, be like, by the way, I'm glad I'm getting to know you as much as I want to do XYZ other things. I'm glad this is forcing us into this holding pattern for the possible relationship, and it's been lovely. I think moving forward, seeing how people dealt with this and seeing how people feel about, you know, their own safety and masks and vaccines, it has become one more thing for me to kind of weed out people that are not appropriate for my life and be like, oh, you're against this and this and you don't like that. Okay, you know, that is an interesting way of being. Next.
Hashtag it's just a preference.
Exactly. Oh, you're against vaccines and masks? Oh, how is that for you? So
I will say, on that same note too, being a person who is on the dating apps, it's crazy how quickly it's become most people's headline on the dating apps, your vaccination status.
Fully vaccinated. Yeah.
Which has been an interesting thing, you know, just to see that change of like, hey, I'm fully vaccinated. I can hang out with people. I can be in person.
Oh, no,
Vaxxed and
I wanted
waxed.
I wanted a gay shirt that says "Vax for Vax." So
it is nice though to be able to go on a date and take your mask off, you know, because you know that you both are safe, which is nice. Yes. Oh, that's what your face looks like. Great, good to know. How about you, Bianca? What do you think?
It's like,
yeah, that's a different reaction.
No, I agree. I think it's forced people to get a little more creative with the way they spend their time with people. And I think it at least forced me to look inward and to really evaluate what I wanted out of a potential relationship and what I did not want. And it's given me a lot of personal knowledge. So I'm hoping that a lot of other people gained a lot of personal knowledge as well. And it's definitely, I mean, like the vaccine thing and the mask thing, it's definitely helped me weed out who I do and do not want to spend my time with. So that's been a nice thing too.
Awesome. And I think we have Vicky back. I think her camera went out, so let's bring her in.
Sorry.
So hey, Vicky.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. Are you seeing a change as someone who works with a lot of patients? You know, how they're experiencing dating now as COVID is ending, and kind of where it goes from there.
Well, I agree with Danny. I mean, it's a lot of people talked about how communication is playing such a big role now. I mean, it's learning how to communicate with the other person. Since COVID, that's, you know, people, they were just calling or the dating apps. So I think it has taught us a lot of stuff that, I mean, we can communicate, we can have a relationship. I mean, we don't have to have the touch feeling all the time. I mean, that we can also call, and it came up with a lot of ways of having sex also. I mean, imagine things, be more creative. I think it has come with a lot of creative ideas for people.
Yeah. You know, on that note, I will say I remember kind of in the peak of COVID, one of the craziest things I remember was seeing on the news that the CDC was recommending the use of glory holes as
it's in my show.
This is something I never thought I would hear in my lifetime.
The New York City Health Department specifically advised doing that, and they released it just in time for Prime Month last year. So,
what a strange time that we were all in, where the New York Public Health Department is like, "Hey, go do this, do that. That's safer.
Try it."
Out of all the new experiences, I got to tell you, Jason, I'm jealous of your experience. I don't own a kayak. I've always wanted to go kayaking, and I'm like, God, man, this would have definitely been the right time.
It was quite literally the best buy I've ever had to this day. Like, I've never Cell phone I use all the time. Screw it. Just give me a kayak. That's all. It's the best. It's the best. I highly recommend. And because of COVID, there was a sale, so it was half off. So like, there's no bad things happening.
So kayaks were available, but bicycles were not.
Right.
Exactly.
The whole struggle. Yeah, COVID definitely made me wish I was a more outdoorsy person than I am. I'm not. So it was just me watching a lot of Netflix.
This past Saturday at Tampa Pride was my first time out in the full sun, not walking from my house to my car and vice versa.
Yeah. Well, I think on that note, I want to ask one final question for everyone, which is just, what would you like to see? How would you like to see the world of dating in the LGBTQIA community change? How do you think it needs to change going forward? Let's start with Danny.
Okay. Without sounding like an old man, I would love to see dating go back to the basics again. Conversations face to face now, but getting to know somebody before making assumptions, before giving a good part of yourself out to that person. I mean, unless there's a mutual understanding if that's what you want to do, but the emphasis should be more so on meeting and discussing and making a friendship rather than a notch on the bedpost and or just a nilly-willy experience and then forgetting about it. So maybe going back to the basics, I think, would be a good thing.
Awesome. I've always said I feel like such a privilege to be a gay man at the age that I'm at, because I was raised in a time before there was Grindr, but also exist in the time where it is there, so I know how to do both. It's amazing how many of my younger friends I know who just don't know how to talk to someone they're interested in one-on-one. Like, they'll see someone they like, and rather than talk to them, they'll immediately go to their phone to see if they're on Grindr versus like have the conversation with that person. I'm like, but they're here. You could talk to them. They're right in front of you. And it's amazing how many don't.
Yeah, and those face-to-face times work perfectly. Support your gay bars. Keep them up and running.
Absolutely, and we need to. We need to. We're losing queer spaces way too fast. So yeah, absolutely. Again, when I was a boy, we had to go to other people who were LGBTQIA, right? We didn't have apps to find them. We had to go to the places where they would be to try to find other people. What about you, Logan? What would you like to see? How would you like to see the dating in this community?
My wish to gay Santa would be in general openness and communication to become the norm, like you were saying, dovetailing onto that. But in particular, if someone has wants or thoughts or desires or questions, say them. That life is too short to sit in a secondary closet about, I don't know about this. Go know about this thing. Go research it and read about it and Google it and then maybe try it. Or even if that means like, I have discovered that I am monogamous. Cool. Find out healthy ways of having a well-communicated, well-established, boundary and respect-woven monogamous relationship, and go do your legwork and research. And I think a world where people were living healthier, more deliberate lives would be a beautiful place. Either direction, any direction.
For sure. It's amazing. I even think on my life about how many situations I've been in where I was like, man, I wish I had just communicated better in that, especially when it comes to sex and dating, right? I wish I had communicated what I wanted out of this person or, what I needed this person to know. And I think of how many times we, when we're younger, just kind of go, well, I can't talk about that. Right. So, yeah, it would be great to see us evolve.
Plot twist, you can and you should.
I think you learn as you grow, but hopefully people will start learning that sooner and sooner. What about you, Bianca? What would you love to see? How would you like to see changes in our community?
Kind of tagging off of Logan, I would love for people to be more open to learning and open to the fact that they don't know everything. And I think there's a lot that we can learn from the people around us. I feel like right now in my life, I'm learning so much about myself sexually because I have a lot of friends who are in open relationships or polyamorous, which has never been really my cup of tea solely because I didn't know anything about it. So I've I've hung out with my friends more and communicated with them more to learn more about their lifestyles and to see, is this something that I would be open to experimenting with or just learning? I think knowledge is power. So I think just seeing more people be more open to learning new things and open to the fact that they don't know it all yet.
For sure. What about you, Jason? How would you like to see our community grow and change?
I think I'm pretty much going to say the same thing. More conversation, more compassionate conversation on topics that make you uncomfortable. I would like more education about the trans community specifically within our LGBTQ community, because there's still a lot of people who are very uneducated, whether it be just how trans people work or what it's like to date a trans person. And I think that's a huge thing. It'll prevent a lot of uncomfortable conversations. Yeah, we need conversations, but there are some things through education that don't necessarily need to be addressed out of the comfort of the individual, who has to be just very, very open about themselves in a kind of an awkward way, more so than you would in another conversation with someone you're dating. If both are cisgender people, conversation is way different from like a cisgender and a transgender person. So education is huge, and then a compassionate conversation is even bigger.
For sure. And I think the more we talk and the more we're open and honest with people, the more things become understood universally, right? I think of when I was a kid and I didn't know any openly out transgender individuals. So it was something I didn't understand. I didn't know anybody who had been in an open relationship, at least who spoke about it, right? So growing up, all of these things felt so taboo. And I grew up in a pretty liberal household, right? So I think of the people who grew up in like Midwestern, more conservative areas too. So the more I think we can have these conversations, the more knowledgeable we'll be, and the more it'll all become the norm, right? Something we're used to seeing. How about you, Vicky? What would be your wish for the LGBTQIA community?
I think, what everybody said, Bianca, all of you, a lot of communication. There's a lot of stigma. There's a lot of taboo about what is it that we should do, not do. There's a lot of taboos. The people are not educated, not even educated. They don't read about certain things. They're afraid of certain things. So becomes a stigma for a lot of stuff. So I think opening up to your partner, and I think Logan or Danny were the ones saying, I like this, I want to do this, try things out. I think everything is allowed as long as both, are willing. So I think it's more about opening it up and communication. Respect is another thing, compromising. Respect your partner in a sense that if you are with someone, they deserve respect. And be honest. Honesty, I think it's a big component also of a relationship. So I think communication, compromising, honesty, being truthful, try new things, be open to so many things that are, they're out there. Leave that stigma and taboo behind and just try things.
Yeah, for sure. Well, these have been great conversations. I want to ask one final question of the group that comes from our audience, which is, it's a great question for us to wrap up on. In the world of singleness and dating and sex, what do you think is the best way for us to meet people outside of the apps within our community? Danny, let's start with you.
Sure. Okay. One, get involved. We've here in Orlando, we've got the LGBT Center. We've got so many other LGBTQ organizations that are always hungry for volunteers, especially now, post-COVID or at the tail end, I should say. I mentioned it earlier too, support the local gay bars. Even if you're not a drinker, just go see a show. It's a great opportunity to meet people face to face and put the phone down. Put the phone down. On these dates, out in public, just put it in your pocket, put it on silent, just forget about it. There's people out there to interact with. So
yeah, that's a big one. That's a big one for me. I know when I was dating someone recently, on our first date, they pulled their phone out at the dinner table, and I was like, this isn't going to work.
No.
You got to be able to sit through a 20-minute dinner without getting on your phone. Otherwise,
At least turn it upside down,
At least hide it. At least
Yeah.
make it a sneak moment. What about you, Logan? Where do you think is a great place for people to meet people?
Well, you could start by tuning in to a Come Out with Pride live stream. No, I was gonna say, Danny's absolutely right. Yeah, queer spaces, bars, beyond bars, even. I think is going to be really important. Local activist organizations. Imagine meeting a like-minded person at a rally or a march or a political fundraiser or a Black Lives Matter campaign. Like, ta-da! Here's someone who's like-minded with you. Imagine that. Those are all really great places to start with. And even, getting old-fashioned friends of friends, having a friend introduce you to, hey, I have a coworker I think you would vibe really well with, or hey, I have thus and so, can really help. I know those can be not great or perfect, but you can, put them out there and say like, hey, have you ever considered, can I introduce you to somebody? And yeah, just test the waters.
I love that. What about you, Bianca? What do you think? What's a great way for people to meet people?
I definitely rely on the friend of a friend. I've definitely been down that route a lot. I work in a lot of queer spaces, so I know I have had other friends who have met other partners and people in those spaces as well. And also at marches, like being active in the community and stuff too, and meeting like-minded people. I've definitely run into and met new people in situations like that as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. And don't forget, let's hear from Jason too. Jason, how do you think people should be?
I agree entirely. But to be honest with you, I've never met a partner in a queer space. I have always met people outside of those environments. And I think my best advice is don't be afraid to talk to somebody. Don't be afraid to be a little goofy. Don't be afraid to be a little awkward. It's going to be a little weird at first. It's just going to happen. It's just going to be like that. And that's totally cool. Yeah. And that can also be part of the charm. You're a goofball, so maybe that's going to help. Just don't be afraid to talk to people and shoot your shot. Don't be weird about it, but be a little weird. It's going to happen.
Yeah. I always, when I first meet someone, if I'm interested in them, I try to be a little weird right up front. Because I'm like, I want to introduce you to my weirdness to make sure it's going to work. Because if you don't like someone who's weird and goofy, we're probably not going to work out anyway. So you
got to test the waters, make sure they can handle just how weird you get.
Yeah. Maybe don't give them the full 100% on day one. But
exactly. Pull back a little bit.
Introduce them. What about you, Vicky? How do you think is a great way for people to meet people for potential, dating, life, sex partners, all of that? And I think you are muted, so I'll unmute you.
And like Jason said, it's just that you can meet anyone at any place. You could be standing waiting for the bus. You could be at a restaurant. You could be at the beach. You could be at a park. And if you like someone, why not? Just approach. Just a simple hi, how are you? You can always take a chance. I mean, I don't think there's any particular place. I think it's just that if you like someone, why not? Just get close and say hi, and see what happens after that. But it's just taking a chance. You can meet people like everywhere. There's so many places. I mean, you can be waiting in your doctor's appointment and someone is there, they're just talking to you. You can meet someone there. I mean, there's so many places.
That's great. And you know what? Just for all of our viewers at home, just so you know, a great place might be at the Come Out with Pride Festival on October 9th, 2021.
Exactly.
When we're back, baby.
The world is your dating app.
Right.
But, that is, there's going to be a lot of LGBTQIA plus people there. So I think that's great.
May I add one more thing, though?
Yeah, please do.
Still, especially after this pandemic, you may see somebody by themselves. And just approaching them may not be an invitation that you're into them, but just say hi. There's a lot of people out there who due to the pandemic, I have lost contact with friends, and this is a great opportunity to make new friends and meet new people. So, on the receiving side, if somebody's coming up to talk to you, it doesn't necessarily mean they want to sleep with you, but, lend that helping hand, be a friend, for sure.
For sure. Hey, I know my dogs are getting antsy too, so I understand. So on that note, I want to thank you guys for being a part of this conversation today. It was so great chatting with you all. If there's any place where you want people to follow you or support, please shout that out now, and then we're going to wrap up and say our goodbyes. So let's do a quick around the room. We're going to start with Danny.
Okay, well, pick up Watermark. We're a bi-weekly newsprint publication. Go to watermarkonline.com, but we have over 700 different distribution sites. And then, of course, as a rep from the center as well, check out the center. They have a lot of upcoming events as well. So thank you.
Also, somebody go walk Danny's dog. Logan.
What, my thing cut out. What was the question again?
Just where would you want people to follow you or find you?
Stalk me. You can stalk me online. You can actually use my name, Logan Donahue, all one word, on every form of social media. Everything. Snapchat, Instagram, all the things. Please.
Farmers only.
Not yet. I think that profile that I used to have that profile. It's in my show. But no, yeah, go ahead and follow me in all the places. And yeah, I'm doing various art and weirdness and just fun activisty things around the world. So yeah, it'd be awesome to see
Orlando, you have just a couple shows left of Slut Like Me. At the
I do. 3 more performances, Thursday, Friday, Saturday night. OrlandoFringe.org is where you can get tickets, and that link is in my Instagram bio at Logan Donahue, as it's spelled, boop, boop, right below me. All one word.
What about you, Bianca? Where would you like people to find you, to stalk you, or do you want them to leave you alone?
I'm primarily active on Instagram, my first and last name at Bianca Heard. And also come support the Vixens at Southern Nights. I'll actually be there on Saturday. So, yeah.
Awesome. Just a little tidbit. I do love the way I met Bianca was I was a show director on a show she was a part of, and she saw me at Southern Nights. So when I saw her backstage, I remember you were like, "Oh no, I saw you at Southern Nights," and I was like, "Oh no, I don't care. Trust me, we're having a good time." I love that. Jason, where can people go to find you?
I'm primarily active on Instagram. You can find me at Idratherbenaked Community. I post all the time, and we have a brand relaunch in June, so make sure you kind of watch out for that.
Awesome. Looking forward to that. Vicky, where can people find you or find more information about Bliss?
Well, we suggest everybody to go to the website. We are Bliss Health. And we also have Instagram, Facebook. We do medical care, mental health, care management. So we do a lot of stuff. Like I said, we offer also the Bliss Care. If you qualify, then you don't have to pay anything for your PrEP, your HIV medication. So it's a great place where you can find everything all in one place.
Awesome. That is.
Thank you so much.
That is so great. Thank you all for joining us today. I had a great time with this conversation. I hope you guys did. And I hope you guys all had fun watching it. Join us next month on the 3rd, what day is today? Wednesday? On the 3rd Wednesday of the month for our next edition of A Seat at the Table. And don't forget, October 9th, Come Out With Pride is back and better than ever. Can't wait to see you all out there. And one more time, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Good night.
Happy Pride Month.
Happy
Happy
Pride!
Pride.
Pride Month.